really excited to be here. Beautiful day in beautiful California and San Francisco. So many of you here know, obviously, how important AI is. Many of you have probably also seen that it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It also doesn't work quite often. In fact, when AI doesn't work, in a lot of the LLM use cases, it is usually because of search. And we're seeing more and more people realizing how important the search infrastructure is to LLMs. And when you try to describe that, I know a lot of you here are actually in technology, but if you try to describe this to a non-technologist, one example I often bring is imagine you ask about what are the most important numbers in Southeast Asia from our sales team last quarter. And the LLM is smart enough to know I should search for those numbers. And then it finds some document that talks about last quarter from 3 years ago, right? And then puts all of that into the prompt, and then you'll get a wrong answer. The LLM will not be able to recover from that search mistake. And we're seeing those kinds of search mistakes in a lot of homegrown solutions. And so we're seeing also just a ton of change that is happening in the search market. Interestingly enough, Microsoft Bing actually moved out of that market. A lot of interesting reasons. I won't pontificate on why. It's obviously clear that Google right now is quite lax in letting people use SERP API and letting itself be crawled. It would, of course, be a little bit weird for Google to say, we don't like crawling, right? But also, there's some complexity when they make changes, and then all of a sudden you used to get 100 results, and now you only get 10, or you have to pay 10x more for 100 results. So there's a lot of complexity on that front, too. And so what we realized 2022, when we actually patented LLMs to be combined with a search engine, about a half a year before ChatGPT came out, we wanted to really start to reimagine that search layer. And that basically meant that we had to kind of rethink how people search. It's obviously not just through 10 blue links with a very short snippet, but when you give all of that information to an LLM, you want snippets to be much, much longer. The LLMs can read much more content than a person could read, right? But you still want that high accuracy, both in terms of the snippets and also the ranked results. You want high relevance for your specific domain. We're seeing more and more excitement and are offering now vertical indices. I often think about the web as kind of being an inch deep, a mile wide. But there's some companies in the legal space or even in general search space that want very deep search results. And so we're offering those also for specific domains. The low latency is actually an interesting question. Some people really care about it, right? If you are a search engine, then you need to have your results within a few hundred milliseconds. But if you run an offload agent that codes for you, and you're kind of expecting it to get back an app in like 5 minutes, then actually it's fine if your search engine takes a few seconds or even minutes, but you care about the accuracy. So there are all these Pareto optimal boundaries of speed and accuracy and cost, and there are different points on that on those curves that we offer, and that I think the world will need more of. And then, of course, cost is an obvious one. And so when you put all that together, we've actually been really fortunate to now do this over 1 billion times a month. And if you think about that, it's kind of insane. Like, we're a fairly small startup, right? We don't have all the end users ourselves, but through our APIs, we're now offering over 1 billion times an API call for a search engine and our search backend to other people's LLMs. It's mostly LLMs. Sometimes it's also directly to users, like DuckDuckGo shows some of the search results from you.com directly, but most companies infuse that into an LLM. And there's a lot of excitement and a lot of fear from a lot of companies because they're seeing their traffic from Google go down. Google, ChatGPT, and others show more and more of the answers. And so a lot of companies are asking, oh, how can I show up in these chat answers? And the truth is that like 80% of the time, you show up in those chat answers if the original search engine gave you those results, right? And so it all boils back down to search, even in this new era of chat. What's exciting is you can, of course, use these search results also within custom agents. There are a lot of different kinds of agents, right? There are knowledge agents and action agents. Knowledge agents are here. Our customers have created over 100,000 such knowledge agents that will do a lot of retrieval work for them, research, put things together, maybe program something, run the numbers, and then give you an accurate result. The action agents that we see a lot in browsers are sort of not fully there yet. I think it's actually almost negligent in terms of cybersecurity if you installed one of those browsers right now, because they have all kinds of attack vectors. So if you actually have very confidential data in your browser, like people's salaries or things like that, or health insurance types of information, I'd be very careful about using especially smaller startup sort of AI browsers. But action agents are going to come, I'm confident, next couple of quarters. Knowledge agents are already here. And so we can kind of think about the various requirements. I already talked about, the longer snippets. I think real-time results is something that's really important too. And then you talk about this to your customers and potential companies, and everyone's like, well, everyone says they're accurate. How do I know who is actually really accurate? And that obviously boils down to running benchmarks. But then the problem is, of course, not all benchmarks are created equal, right? You can actually put together benchmarks and just kind of cherry pick. You choose someone else's APIs that has very short snippet and super fast, and you then compare it to your API that's really, really slow, but has much longer snippets, and you don't pick the right API to compare. So there are a lot of apples and orange comparisons. And so when customers need to make decisions on what is actually the best result for them, they have to make these trade-offs. And I think one of the things I want to really encourage all of us, both I know there are folks in the industry here and some of our competitors, but are also potential customers, is to actually try to open source those benchmarks. When you run and compare an API to another, like I would personally, as a, also we're buying a bunch of other software, of course, like you should never trust anyone who doesn't have an open source benchmark, but pretends to say, oh, we're better, we're more accurate, and so on. I think that works in the consumer space, but in enterprise software, I hope we can kind of end that. And then, of course, one of the best things that could happen, and maybe an opportunity also for Bright Data, is to offer an industry sort of official benchmark, right, where we can all collaborate, and it's very easy to plug in your sets of queries and then get results for it. And so one fortunate thing is that for several chat engines, where you get the full answer, not the search engine, but of course they're highly correlated, we do actually have research papers that have done this. This started in 2024. This is a paper by Harvard and Salesforce Research and a few other folks that did the first comparison of chat engines and answer engines. And fortunately, you see here, green is good, red's bad, yellow is mediocre. And U.com already back then had the most green and the least red, and so on, compared to Bing, Perplexity, and at the time, SearchGPT. Now, of course, things are changing every couple months. Earlier this year, we introduced ARI, our advanced research mode, and then a new paper came out. Actually, the same group ran another comparison, did a lot of other evaluations. And at the time, we were still the most accurate. Now, actually, GPT-5 that came out almost half a year after ARI has one more red, but also 2 more greens across these different metrics. But compared to pretty much everyone else, we are more accurate. We have fewer overconfident answers. In fact, I'm really excited to show or know that we have basically 0 one-sided answers in our research mode, right? How can we have few or 0 one-sided answers? We have a very broad range of search results, right? And without that, these chat engines couldn't do it at all. And given that GPT-5 came out over half a year after us, I think if we iterated a little bit on our APIs, we'll beat them again. It is kind of surprising, and this is nice because, again, you can see the code here on GitHub. You can actually run this code, right? This is how you know the benchmarks are real. If there's open source code that lets you verify the benchmarks and rerun them themselves and know there's no sort of selective cherry picking and so on going on. And you can see here that clearly accuracy is not a requirement for consumer success, right? So you can see that there are various consumer apps Of course, in some ways, one of the worst ones, like Microsoft Copilots, it's starting to really seep into enterprise that people know that Microsoft Copilots just don't really work. Like, it's quite surprising, right? The agents don't work. The answers are fairly inaccurate. So it's pretty crazy when you look at how much red there is still, given that it is possible, right? We don't have more resources. We don't have more funding than most of these other organizations, but if you care about it and you have a good search backend, you can actually be more accurate than companies that are worth like hundreds of billions of dollars. One thing that's really cool, and another proof point of this for us, is actually that when you now go on OpenAI's OSS GPT, you can see here what it defaults to for, they call it a browser tool, but really it's a search tool. And that is the U.com backend. Really exciting to see companies like OpenAI defaulting to the most accurate solutions, and we see enterprise customers wanting to do that too. And when I say enterprise customers, there are a lot of B2B just customers that also are businesses, but there's also a lot of B2B2C, like where their end users are just general users, and we're excited to partner with both. Now, zooming out a little bit, I want to just think about the whole space in general, and kind of give all of us maybe some even more excitement about what's coming up. These were my predictions last year for this year, and I talk about massive data. It's necessary but not sufficient requirement for superintelligence. We'll continue to need that, but it won't be enough to keep going and improve reasoning and so on. And that's sort of happened post-training, kind of leveled out in a lot of places when it comes to just training data, especially also before that pre-training. And we now need more clever research again to improve these models even further. The one, number 3 here of my predictions was hundreds of millions of agents will be surfing the web. Depending on how you count agents, and if you count really simple bots, we're clearly there already. But in my hope, it'll be actually sort of like personal assistants that can really do stuff for you. And there, we're actually landing in a place that I think all of AI is going to land quite often in, which is what I call murky human incentive structures. Like we could have an AI agent book my trip on Expedia, but then Expedia doesn't get ads anymore, and so Expedia is going to try to block my agent from doing work, right? Because my agent, when I tell it I need to go to New York for work in 3 days, it's not going to get distracted by, do you also want to fly to the Bahamas over the summer, in an ad, right? And so it challenges like most of the internet and how it monetizes, and so there will be a lot of pushback across different websites to letting your AI assistants do the work for you. The one thing that I do think is going to happen, though, is that most of us at work, and a lot of engineers in the room here already know this, but most of us in pretty much every digital work role are going to have to get better at delegating work, right? And this is not intuitive to a lot of folks. Most people are individual contributors, right? The more they work, the more they get done. But eventually, I think saying like, I'm not good with this agent delegation thing is similar to someone at work saying, I'm not good with this computer thing. You just don't see those people at work anymore, right? They all had to retire. And the same thing in 5 to 10 years will be the case if you're not delegating your work effectively to other agents. So then the question is, how could those agents become? And there, I actually don't want to be a total Debbie Downer. I think there's a lot of potential for research still. But it's also clear to me that in a lot of AI research, we're now hitting what I call anthropic bounds. Not meant as a diss to the company Anthropic, but it's just basically the idea that when you only use human training data, human IQ tests, human general math and literature and so on exams, and you use that to evaluate the intelligence of an AI and to train an AI, well, then the AI can only get that much better than what those human tests tell you is 100% accuracy, right? And so at some point, we need to move beyond just that kind of human-generated training data, and we need to move even beyond just human preference data, right? There's the famous sort of race for the best LLMs in terms of ELO scores, but again, it's humans saying, I'm more entertained, I like this answer better. At some point, we're going to have to move towards simulations and allowing AI to be much more open-ended in the Tim Rockteschel kind of sense, and to recursively self-improve based on goals. And as we're moving towards that, I think we're going to see that not just search engines, but browsers and almost all other kinds of technology that we've built as humanity are going to become different types of infrastructure layer and tools towards actually building that superintelligence.